Hello, welcome back to this week's Luthercast, where we are going through Luther's Catechism and explaining his understanding of the Ten Commandments and how they are applied to our lives. As always, I welcome comments or questions down below, and I also encourage you to go back through previous clips for further questions or inquiries. Last week, we took a look at Luther's understanding of the Fourth Commandment, which is, you are to honor your mother and father. This week, the focus shifts from the household to the civil arena. It should be made clear from the onset that the distinction that we have today between church and state was not a distinction that Luther made. In fact, for better or for worse, they were one and the same. Order is important for Luther, and civil authority provides this for us. He writes on 407 in our Book of Concord, there's civil rulers as your own parents. God gives us food, house and home, protection and security, and God preserves us. Therefore, because they bear the same name and title with all honor as their chief distinction, it is also our duty to honor and respect them as the most precious treasure, most priceless jewel on earth. God commands us to honor our parents and also, by extension, our other authority figures. The reason for this, at least in Luther's eyes, other than it's commanded by God, is he fears and in fact believes that everyone wants to be their own Lord, and to therefore be free of all authority, and even worse, the freedom to do whatever they want. Luther does believe that Christians have freedom, but simply put, this freedom is understood as the ability to live one's life for our neighbor and by extension, God as well. And Luther fleshes this out more in his letter, Freedom of a Christian, and you can find that in 3 treatises, or you can also find that in the Luther Works volume as well. And this quote is, a Christian is a perfectly free lord of all, subject to none. A Christian is a perfectly dutiful servant of all, subject to all. In this, these two sentences have a lot of connection with this commandment. And while it's not in Luther's explanation of the Fourth Commandment, it's certainly implicit. But when this freedom is misunderstood, it can be abused, and civil authorities are not immune to this temptation. As idealistic as it may be, not every civil authority is going to be an upstanding one, and Luther warns against this. He writes, don't imagine that the parental, and he would add civil here as well, office as a matter of your pleasure and whim. It's a strict commandment and injunction of God, let's get that right, who holds you accountable for it. In short, God calls us to love one another, and when the civil authority does not act in such a way that this love is put forth, then they're simply appeasing themselves, and they're abusing other people for their own gain. For Luther, all authority rests with God, and anything that seeks to find freedom outside of God's grace is fruitless. And here again, we're pointed back to the first commandment, yet again, making idols out of things that aren't God. So ultimately, Luther wants us to place our trust in God. Here Luther shifts our attention back to children, as we explored last week, and he believes education and instruction are essential. He writes, God has given us children and entrusted them to us precisely so that we may raise and govern them according to his will. Otherwise, God would have no need for fathers and mothers, or really, I guess, this commandment either. Therefore, let all people know that it is their chief duty, at the risk of losing grace, first to bring up their children in the fear and knowledge of God, and then, if they are so gifted, also to have them engage in formal study and learn so that they may be of service wherever they are needed. The two sections of the Fourth Commandment, that being the parental and the civil, are essentially two sides of the same coin, but their interplay is essential in not only bringing up upstanding, or what Luther would say, upstanding children, but also having orderly government as well, all the while placing God at the center. So that's a lot of information for another video. So that's enough for this week. And I encourage you to read on yourselves and also to post comments below. They're most welcome, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. God bless.